Hey guys, welcome back to Honey in the Rock. I'm Sophie, and this is Mary Spencer. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
So I think you messaged me, and then
Yeah,
that's how I saw you, and then I looked at your book and stuff. Um,
yeah.
but I'm excited to learn more about you and your story and how you started writing. What was your book called again? I couldn't remember.
It's called cul-de-sac crossroads.
Okay, I love it.
Yes,
So
yes.
I'm excited to hear about how that all came about.
Yeah.
But tell us a little about yourself.
Yeah. So I'm Mary Spencer. I grew up in South Georgia. And then I became the black sheep of my family, went to Auburn. And when everybody goes to UGA, I was like, I'm going to do something different and go to a school where I know no one. So went to Auburn, loved it. And then I moved up to Nashville, where I live now, to go to grad school. And I work for a nonprofit, and I'm called Daystar Counseling Ministries. I work with kids, do fundraising for our sliding scale at Daystar. And then I just wrote my very first book about navigating your 20s.
That is so cool. I did not know
Yeah.
you worked at a nonprofit. That's so
Yes, I do. Yeah, I love it. I love it. So I work in a nonprofit full time, and then I write part time. So lots of
that's
fun
cool.
things. Yeah.
Uh, I tried to be the black sheep of my family. Couldn't do it.
But I know it's hard to do. I was like, do I just go to UGA? I know a lot of people there, but I really felt like the Lord was like, no, and I'll get into that a little bit. But yeah, I loved Auburn.
That's so fun. That's so sweet.
Yeah,
I didn't know anybody that went to Auburn, uh,
really,
but growing up, one of my best friends was a huge Auburn fan.
really. Yeah, it's the best. It's a great, I feel like it's pretty similar to Furman. It's just a beautiful campus and lots of great people. So yeah,
Sweet. I love that. Okay, and now we'll just go straight into it.
let's just jump in. Okay.
Tell yourself. Tell yourself
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah. So I grew up in an amazing Christian family. We went to church every Sunday, went to Sunday school, did all the youth group things. And I feel like I really understood and knew the Lord from a young age, but it was hard to figure out that the relationship wasn't a transactional relationship. Like the Lord didn't want anything from me. I didn't have to earn his love. And I don't feel like I really learned that till later on in college. But I was really involved in my church growing up, and as I got into high school was kind of hard for me because I didn't feel like I fit in. I had one foot in with friends that were kind of in a party scene, and one foot in with friends that weren't that way at all. And I wasn't really into that scene at all. And I just kind of struggled finding my place in high school.
Yeah.
And I really thought, okay, I'm going to go to college, and this is going to fix everything. This is going to be where I like find my people, find my place. And in the movies, all the movies are like, going to college where you don't know anybody is so glamorous, and you're the new kid and it's mysterious. And I learned very quickly that it was not that way. And I got to Auburn and didn't know a soul. And I got cut from a lot of the sororities during recruitment, and just kind of felt like, what in the world am I doing at this place? And I remember probably about a month or two into college, I was kind of angry with the Lord. Like, why am I here? I thought this was going to fix everything. Are you actually who you say you are? Do you actually love me? What are we doing here? Like, I will give everything to you if you'll just help me find peace and joy that I haven't had in a long time. And I really felt his presence in that moment, sitting in my car in my dorm parking lot. Like, I'm with you. I'm not going to give you all the answers right now, but I am here for you. And so I feel like that's where my like true relationship with the Lord began. It wasn't this transactional thing anymore. I didn't have to go to Sunday school or to church to earn his love. He had already done everything that needed to be done for me to be in his family. So as I went throughout college, I got involved in my local church at Auburn and had a lot of incredible friends that were Christians at Auburn. And then when I moved to Nashville, it was so interesting. I was talking to a friend about this earlier, about how there was such a drastic jump from college to post grad, where a lot of friends stopped following the Lord or walked away from their faith or began really questioning their faith. Was it really built on their own foundation with the Lord,
Right.
or their families or friends from college or local ministries they had been involved with? And it was kind of hard to find what your identity was. And so as I went throughout my 20s, I'm now 27, about to be 28, I've really seen how laying the foundation with the Lord, being what is on that foundation, matters so much, because I want to put so many things on the pedestal of my life, relationships or friendships or a job even. And none of that ever satisfies. And every time that I recenter my life and reorient it around the Lord, I'm so much more peaceful and joyful. And my life doesn't always look like these Instagrammable moments, but I still know that the Lord is good, and I'm seeing him more and more throughout that. And I've always loved to write, and I started writing in high school some, and then started writing on a blog at the beginning of college. But again, I kind of felt like, who am I to be writing? And I wanted to be the super relatable writer. So I was like, I'm not going to write about my faith really. But every time I wrote, it somehow had to do with the Lord. And I was like, I feel like, you know what? This is what I need to share. The Lord's put something on my heart. So I'm going to write about what he's doing in my life. So that's kind of how the blog began. And then my senior year of college, I started writing all these stories about what the Lord was doing in my life. And the book that I now have out, originally it was called 22 and Not a Clue, because I was like, I don't have a clue what I'm doing with my life. I'm about to graduate. What am I doing? This is
Yeah.
scary. And now that I'm a little bit older, I've gotten a little bit more of a clue. So I've changed the title. But
I love
uh,
it.
yeah, I was just like, I don't know what's happening, and what does the Lord really want from us in our 20s? And
Yeah.
it's a weird time where you go from college and everyone's in the same season, and then everybody's in different seasons. You're getting married or you're not, or you're
Right.
having babies or you're having a career. There's just so many different paths now. So that's kind of how I started writing the book. And I really felt like the Lord put it on my heart to talk about our 20s, because it's such a mysterious decade of our life that looks different for everybody. But when we center our lives around Him, it changes everything. And I've definitely seen that in my 20s. So that's kind of a little bit about my testimony.
Yeah, that's really sweet. Thank you for sharing all that. So
Yeah.
you okay, I didn't you might have already said it, but if you were
Yeah.
going to give a piece of advice to a girl graduating college, and I feel like it probably can also apply to a girl
Yeah.
graduating high school going into college because you can still
Hmm.
make that life transition, or
Yeah.
even a mom listening going into motherhood like that, like
Yeah.
transition, what would your piece of advice be?
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like anytime you start a new season and move to a new city, it's so tricky. And something that's been so helpful for me is immediately getting plugged into a local church when I moved to a new city. So getting involved, helping with youth group, whatever it is. But when it comes to building community, something I did my freshman year of college, when I was like, okay, I don't have any friends. What do I do to meet people? I was like, okay, for 16 weeks, my second semester of college, I am going to ask a stranger to lunch every week. I'm just going to meet somebody new every week, and maybe we'll be best friends, or maybe we'll be people that say hi to each other on the concourse. I don't know. So I met with somebody new every single week. And then after college, I was in a few of those girls' weddings. I lived with some of those girls. And then some of them we didn't become great friends, but we still text every now and then or see each other around in Nashville. Um, but I feel like when I got to Nashville, I had to kind of start over again. So I started doing that again, where I would ask a barista at a coffee shop to get lunch, or a coworker. I think we're all really scared to just be
Yeah.
vulnerable and say, "Hey, do you want to get together? I feel like we could be friends." But every time that's happened to me, when you're on the receiving end, I'm so like glad someone thought of me in that way to want to get together and become
Yeah.
friends. So that's definitely one piece of advice I would give. And whenever I moved to a new city too, I started doing this a couple years ago. I, in my apartment, have a wall of sticky notes, and I write down my prayers on them, and I put all the prayers that haven't been answered yet on one side, and all the prayers that have been answered on the other side, because I want to see the faithfulness of the Lord in the city that I'm in. And watching those prayers stack up has been so helpful, because being in a new season, whether it's motherhood or being out of college or going into college, it can be so lonely and you feel like the Lord's not really there for you. But now that I'm seeing in tangible ways the Lord is answering my prayers, it has made all the difference.
That's really sweet. I like that. And just to be able to see the faithfulness of him and just be able to like honor
Yeah.
him in that. And
Yeah.
sometimes that we need to write it down or tell somebody what we're praying for,
Yeah.
so they can see the goodness of God in that, but
Right.
also so we can see. Because I'm personally quick to be like, oh, he must have not answered that one.
Right.
But maybe he just wasn't looking for it because I forgot that I prayed for it.
Right.
So Um,
Yeah.
just that piece of advice, I think getting plugged into a local church is just so important. And I think that goes into, um, I think sometimes, I don't really know, but maybe the transition could be hard from one season to another when you're only plugged into a certain ministry because it feels like your faith might be in that. So it might be FCA or Delight or whatever that looks like in
Yeah.
at your high school or whatever that is. But then when you get taken out of that season, obviously you don't keep going back to the high school
Yeah.
FCA or the middle school FCA. Like you go to the next thing. But just being plugged into a local church, it's like you're with fellow believers. It's not your faith is not in the church. Your faith is in Jesus alone. And then these other ministries can like add on.
Right.
I think at SCA, one of the first weeks, they were like, "We need y'all to get plugged into local Bible believing churches."
Yeah. So
Because
good.
PA is the protein shake, and that's the meal or something. They said,
Yeah, that's so good.
and so just being um, aware of that and being like, this is a fun and good thing to be a part
Yeah,
of a local ministry in that way. But to be plugged into a Bible believing church is so important. Um,
yeah,
so
yeah. And I think
really
that
like
was
that.
hard too post-COVID. Everybody was watching church online or doing church from home. And then after COVID, it was like, do we go back in person to church? Where do I even go to church? Things have changed so much. But again, to what you're saying, I feel like, yeah, we've got to have that local church that we're plugged into and people that are checking in on us because we're all going to walk through dark seasons. And if nobody knows you at a local church, then there's not going to be that community that can check in on you and be there for you. So, yeah, I'm a big believer of the local church.
Yes, and then keeping accountable in that way too.
Yeah, totally.
Um, okay, I want to hear a little more about, you mentioned a little bit at the beginning, that you felt like you had to earn his
Hmm.
love.
Yeah,
Um, and so what did that look like? And then what does it kind of look like now that it's like we don't earn his love, it's a gift? And
yeah.
how do you receive, what does it look like to receive that gift in your life?
Yeah, yeah, that's something I've always struggled with because I am the kind of person that has a checklist and I
Mhm.
want to check everything off. And with the Lord, that looked like in high school, making sure we had this thing called servant leadership team at church. So helping with youth group, being at youth group, reading my Bible every day, even if I didn't understand what was going on, as long as I read it really quickly, I did what I needed to do for the day. And just feeling like I was doing enough to be a recipient of his love. And when I had that mindset shift in college, I was like, oh, I mean, I love him and I want to do those things, but if I miss a day of reading my Bible, he's not going to punish me. If I have a moment where I'm doubting the Lord, he is okay with that. That means, I have a real relationship with him and I'm going to have doubts and I'm going to have questions. Um, so yeah, I have to check myself a lot still, even at 27, of like, okay, just because I missed reading my Bible today doesn't mean that he doesn't love me. And I've recently, this has been kind of a more past year thing. It doesn't have to look like I'm reading the Bible every day for me to be talking with him. I can talk with him in my car, or I can listen to worship music on the way to work. I can be with him, connected to him in so many different moments because he's always with me. And I did not understand that when I was in middle school, high school, the fact that he is always where I am, because that feels so hard to grasp, and we're not going to fully ever understand that. But yeah, there's so much beauty in that, and I'm just naturally kind of an achiever kind of personality. So even today, I was like, okay, there's a million things I need to do, but what would it look like if I just rested and didn't do any of the things on my checklist? Is that going to be okay? Will I be enough for the day? So that's hard for me to grapple with, but I've seen so much redemption in my story of the Lord being like, you don't have to earn any of this. There is nothing that you can even do to earn this. My
Right.
love is freely given, and I love you so much no matter what you do every day. So that's been really freeing.
That is really sweet and freeing. And I like the part of like it's it's because we get to read our Bible.
Yeah.
If we miss a day, it's not gonna like beat ourselves up.
Yeah.
It's okay. But that's a gift. It's all of these things are gifts. Um,
Yeah.
but it is the urge to I see that too. Of like, oh, God is gonna give up on me,
Right.
or not doing enough. I'm not doing enough. But it's like we're not earning our salvation, and our love for him is going to come with obedience.
Yeah.
Um, and that is going to look differently in everybody's life. And so we can't compare like to one another, but also just like it's just you and God. So
Yeah.
I really like that too. There was something
Yeah.
else that I was going to say, and then I
Yeah.
got distracted by that. What
Yeah. I feel like growing up, I'd read the Bible, but I really didn't understand what was going on. It's hard to know the context behind
yeah.
the Bible. And over the past year, I've been doing the Bible recap. I don't know if you know anything about that, but I love it. And every day, this woman named Tara Lee Cobble, she gives you a couple passages to read for the day, goes in chronological order, and then there's a podcast to accompany it. So you can kind of get, okay, this is what's going on in the Bible. And
Right.
I have fallen in love with reading the Bible the past year because I'm like, wow, look at the way the Lord continued to redeem the Israelites after they continually turned away and away and away from him. But I didn't understand what in the world was going on in the Bible growing up. So that has been so helpful in my walk with the Lord of like, okay, these stories make a little bit more sense when I have some context. Sometimes just reading the Bible, I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. So that has been so helpful.
That is so good. And that's just like something that's so encouraging to hear. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
it's so often it's like, oh, the Bible's too hard to read. The Bible's this, and it's like, sure, sometimes it's confusing and hard to read, like 100%.
Yeah.
But like, it's encouraging to hear every once in a while, it's like, I love reading the Bible. Like, I feel
Yeah.
it's, like, life-giving because it is. And
Yeah.
that doesn't mean it's not gonna be hard some days and be confusing
Right.
some days, but that's really sweet.
Yeah,
I
I just have gotten that way.
Yes, I also
Yeah.
remember what I was gonna ask you.
Okay,
Did
yes.
you notice that, like, from growing up thinking that you needed to earn Jesus's love,
Mhm.
did you notice that happening in, like, relationships and friendships and stuff?
Yeah, definitely. When I got to college, so my high school was pretty small. I graduated with 55 kids. So
Okay.
when I got to Auburn, I was like, okay, trying to make friends. Do I have to be the funniest person in the room for them to like me? Do I have to be the smartest person in the room for them to like me? What do I have to do to fit in and to have people to trust me and want to be my friend? Which was really hard. I would say the first 2 years of college because I didn't become somebody that I wasn't, but there was moments where I shifted who I was to fit whoever I was around.
Yeah.
Um, Trying to earn their love because I was so lonely and confused about being in a place where I didn't know anybody. So yeah, I've definitely had those moments of I can see myself even in my late 20s. I'm like, oh, when I was hanging out with this person, was I being my most authentic self of who the Lord created me to be, or was I trying to fit in? Because especially in Nashville, it's such a culture of everybody seeking power and fame. There's music artists all the time here, or actresses, or influencers, and it's hard not to get caught up in that. Um, but I would say over the past couple years, I've just been like, okay, I'm going to be exactly who the Lord's created me to be. And in writing this book, I feel like I've had to walk in that because nobody wants to read fluff about the Christian walk. People want to hear real stories about what's going on in your life and how they can relate because it's hard being a Christian in this world. So I feel like writing the book helped push me into that because I constantly want to earn people's affection at work or earn people's affection in friendships, relationships, to be the person that's chosen because there's been moments where I haven't felt like that and I desperately want that. But I have to keep going back to the Lord continually chooses me. He will always choose me. But I haven't always seen that in the world. So I have a hard time trusting that sometimes.
I get that too, and I feel like that's just so real. Like, it's just, like it's easy to do, but to maybe have somebody, like, keep you accountable in that. Like, me and my roommate talk about that.
Yeah.
Like, I did I just talk differently with those people than with these people? And I
Yeah.
didn't, like, why did I use that accent? Or, like, stuff like that, like, little things,
Right.
and it's not changing who I am, but it's just, like, little things.
Yeah.
But then also saying, like, I might be sillier with these people than these people, and
Yeah.
that's okay. I'm not
Totally.
pretending one way, but it's when, like, you're making moral differences with certain people, for them to like you, and I think
Yeah.
that's really easy to do, especially in a transition season that I would have
Yeah.
never noticed before because where I'm from, it's like I went to elementary school, middle school, and high school with all the same girls,
Yeah.
and they know who I am. Didn't have to pretend. I couldn't pretend. Like, it was just me,
Yeah. They've
and they
known you.
those 5. Like, there's none of that. I grew up in the church. I've always known, like, I wasn't pretending at church because y'all have all
Yeah.
you told me in the nursery.
Yeah.
And so when I got to school, it was like, don't pretend to talk this way with these people and then this with these people. And it's just
Yeah.
a good reminder, I think, to just be yourself. And I know that's easier said than done, but
Totally.
and then if people don't like you, it's also okay. Like, we don't
Yeah.
earn God's love, and
Yes.
we'll have His love at the end of the
Yeah.
day.
I think I've
Um,
had to learn that because I'm like, oh, I want everybody to like me. And it's okay if you're not everybody's cup of tea. And that
right,
doesn't mean they don't like you, but you can only have so many friends. You can only have so many deep relationships. And
right.
yeah, I feel like in my 20s, I've really learned like I want to really, really invest well
Yeah,
in relationships that I'm in. And maybe that means that I have less friends than I did in college. And that's okay.
it is. Yeah. Different seasons of life call for different things.
Exactly. Yeah.
I feel like our books are very similar in a way.
Yeah. Yeah.
For like, I think I have a little younger. You have your 20s, and I have the little bit like little below
Yeah.
20s um age group. But it is really sweet, and it is something. It's like mine comes out the 22nd, and
Yeah.
maybe the same day this podcast does. I don't really know. No, the
Okay,
next one.
cool.
Never
Okay.
mind. Well, so by the time this comes out, the book should already be out, and it's
That's
like,
awesome.
well, there's no faking it either. Like, if somebody reads the book, like, that was raw and
So vulnerable.
real, and so it's like I can't pretend like if you're gonna read this and then I'm acting this way, like,
Yeah.
you'll see. And obviously, like, I'll still like sin and mess up and need rescuing every day, but
Yeah.
just in the like sense of being who I am, who God created me to be, it's like Once you
Yeah.
do something like that, it's like no pretending.
There's no going back. Yeah, yeah, that's so
It
awesome.
is
It's really
leadership.
vulnerable to write a book, and that's so exciting. Your book's coming out so soon, and you'll even hear from your friends. They'll say, "Oh, I didn't realize that about you, or I didn't know these things about you." And you're like, "You know me the best, and you didn't know this. I'm so sorry I haven't shared that with you." But it is a really cool but vulnerable thing to write a book and be like, "Okay, I'm going to share what the Lord's doing in my life,
Right.
and I have no idea how it's going to be received, but I'm just going to be obedient in what He's calling me to." So
Right.
that's so exciting.
I know. I feel like that's a good word to like wrap up on. It's just like being obedient to what he's calling us to do in
Yeah.
whatever season of life you're in. And I feel like we talked a lot about the transition season and what that looks like to stay faithful um, in that type of season, but just to be obedient to what he puts in front of us. And so I think
Yes.
it's really sweet.
Yeah, I love that.
Well, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. This is so fun. You're amazing, and thank you for doing this work so early on in your life. I mean, that is what we dream about doing in our 50s and 60s,
Yeah.
and you're doing it while you're in college. So,
Yes.
thanks for being such a light to people in
Well, I
college.
appreciate that. I'll have to order
Yeah.
your book and then I'll read it the day I turn 20.
Yep. Same with your book. I cannot wait to read it.
Sweet. Well, thank you so
Yeah.
much for coming on.
Of course. Thank you.
And I'll see you guys next week. Bye.